On this week's panel, we've got Greville Pabst from WBPPropertyGroup.
Hello.
And Robert LaRocca from the REIV.
Good to see you again.
Today we're talking about how to set a sale price and how do you assess the value of your property. Robert, how do you set a sale price?
Look, it really depends upon whether you're the real estate agent who's been hired to sell the property or whether it's your property, and that's a much more emotive decision to make at that point. If you're the real estate agent, you've got to follow what's in the Estate Agents Act, and that requires that you provide the vendor with an estimated selling price with the range not greater than 10% when they sign the sales authority. So effectively, that's the real estate agent telling the vendor that's what they think it will sell for.
Do you ever get the situation where the owners think their property is worth more?
I think you probably almost always get that situation. I mean, value is a really topical issue. People always want to know what their home is or may be worth, and everybody's got a different view about that because everyone comes to it with a different set of values and desires and needs. So it's really hard. The real estate agent can't really provide an exact value. They're providing an indication, and then you go through the marketing process and it might come out the other end at much more or about that point, or it may not sell if it goes to auction sometimes as well. So, value is a very difficult thing to get exactly right.
Greville, what's your tips on setting a value or a price for a property?
Well, firstly, value, doing a valuation, it's an art, it's not a science. So Robert's very correct, and it is very difficult to come up with a valuation because there's a lot of emotive issues. But I suppose we don't sell real estate, but we do advise vendors, and we do obviously value property. And some of the things that we say is that value is really undermined by the data and have the right research and the right information. So when I'm advising vendors, I really encourage them to go out and have a look in the marketplace, attend a number of auctions, go to lots of open for inspections, and also if they still want more confidence to engage an independent person in that process, such as a valuer or a buyer's agent, to give them that type of advice.
That's always the case, isn't it, Robert? There's always someone on the other side of the transaction. The seller wants the best price and the buyer wants the smallest price.
It all depends upon your perspective. If it's your home, you want it to sell for as much as you can possibly get. But then when you go to buy that next home, you want that to sell for as low as you can possibly get because it's your money. Perspective is really important. I was on council in the north of Melbourne for about 6 years. We used to send out rates notices, and I know that when people received their rates notice, their perspective was they wanted the value to be lower because they wanted to have lower rates. So the perspective is really critical, and a favourite saying of mine is a property is really only worth what the other person's willing to pay for it.
Yeah, that is correct. It is, I have a saying as well. It's about price is what you pay, and value is what you get.
Yeah, it's a good saying.
And just even on the weekend, I was driving around some streets in Armidale, and you can. I was driving down Kooyong Road, and if you go to the west side of Kooyong Road, and you go down some of those streets on Denby Road and Sutherland Road, Armidale Street, Hampden Road. And you see what does set aside value, and it's those wide streets and it's those tree-lined avenues and the good, the architectural style of those streets. But if you then drive and you go down, say, on the east side of Kooyong Road, and you go to some of the streets like Inverness and St George's, St James Street, it's a completely different streetscape. And whilst you're still in Armidale, the values are completely different because the streetscapes are different. And on the east side, you've got the railway line, and you've got noise from Dandenong Road up around Gladstone Street. And so there's those micro things that really do determine value, even in one suburb.
How do you manage the seller's expectations in a market like we've got today?
Look, vendors form their own expectations. That's based upon their own views, but also what they see going on around them. And a lot of people now who are selling their home saw only a year ago prices go up 20%. They may not be cognizant that half of that was catch up from the GFC when prices fell, and the other half was probably some real growth. often the management of people's expectations and how they change occurs during the campaign, which is why vendors often, if they're going to an auction, don't set their reserve till the day before the campaign, because they want to see what the interest is like. So if they're having their opens and they're having very low attendances, then that will reduce their expectations. But if there's 30 people coming through the house twice a week, then their expectations will increase. And of course, the actual negotiation process is the ultimate way of changing people's expectations of what they may or may not get for their house, or what someone may or may not sell. Because ultimately, you have to weigh up, how important is it that I sell now as opposed to waiting? Will I get a higher price? And the buyer goes through that same process as well. Do I have to buy now? Because people bring to that not only the views formed by what they see, but their own personal lives. I mean, people don't always buy and sell homes just for the fun of it. They're doing it for some life reason, and that has an impact upon how much they're willing to pay.
Yeah.
We need to put things in perspective. Property is not something that you transact on a yearly or daily basis like the share market.
Yeah.
It's something that when you buy real estate, because of the high transactional costs, you really don't see really huge. You shouldn't expect gains until 7 to 10 years. It really is an investment that you make over a longer term horizon. So you can't look in the papers when they come out every quarter. You get the median house price and people say, oh, look at my suburb, it's just gone up 20%. But you just need to be very careful about those types of statistics, and there can be a lot of factors that can skew that data, even into a particular suburb where you may have had a large new development go in where there's lots of sales during that quarter, and that can really skew the median house price for that particular quarter. Or on the other side of things, if there's less than 30 transactions in a suburb, the median house price data then is, not much good either. So,
and that's a really good point, because you go back to, what is that valuation? And I mean, you get your council rates, which has got a valuation written on them, and then you get, the median prices every quarter. Neither of those are ones that your house is necessarily going to sell for. Then you can get a professional valuation, and again, that's not necessarily what your property is going to sell for. So it's important to understand what all those different figures are, and that ultimately on the day, if you're selling a home, it'll be sold for what the other person's willing to pay for it.
yeah.
Also, the other point about you're not doing this on a yearly basis is really important. I mean, people will pay $25,000, $35,000, $40,000 in stamp duty when they buy that home, and the likelihood of making that up in capital gains in the first year is not very high. And if you do want to go down that path, then you're just losing money.
Good property, you don't get any discounts. And good property, you have to pay market value and more. But over time, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, when you go to sell that property again, guess what? It's always a well-attended auction, and there's always competitive bidding.
Thanks very much, Greville. Thanks,
No problem.
Robert. That's all we've got time for today.